Democratic State Representative Cassandra Garcia Hernandez of Farmers Branch. Thank you so much and welcome to Eye on Politics.
Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You bet. Good to see you. So you are speaking at LULAC's National Convention, which is being held in Fort Worth this year. Talk to me about your message and the fact that this is in North Texas.
Absolutely. Well, today I'm really excited to be invited to be speaking on, in particular, a Latinas panel of exceptional Dallas County leaders, both in higher education as well as elected officials, just to speak to our younger generation of Latinas and figuring out in what ways that they can be part of and step into their purpose, and whether doing things in higher education or running for office or being elected officials or just stepping up in positions in the boardroom. And I'm honored to have been invited to come and speak to young women about those particular type of issues.
What's your advice to them?
My advice to them is, quite frankly, so many of us young Latinas very often don't find ourselves in those type of spaces. And so really important in just recognizing that imposter syndrome is a real thing, something that certainly impacts many communities, but in particular Latinas in particular. And so having the ability to be able to speak to young women about my own struggles with imposter syndrome, and recognizing that even through that, we can persevere and we can still find our places in where our voices matter, where other people should hear from us, and the things that we've experienced through our lives, and how we can really make an impact in our community.
And when you talk about imposter syndrome, lay it out for me, and how did you overcome it?
Sure. So today I'll talk about it a little bit, but in particular, I've encountered it many times in life where just things have happened where I questioned whether it was a particular right path that I had taken, or things that I was doing that maybe I thought I was not quite up to speed or ready to do those particular things. And I've encountered many times in my life where I felt like I wasn't ready for things, whether it was undergrad or law school, where I thought maybe an easy option was for me to just quit because it was tough, it was hard. In addition to that, more recently, things like losing my first run for elected office when I first ran for State House, as well as during my second campaign while I was running, the stress from that. And more recently, during quorum break, whenever both me and my colleagues were faced with threats and the fear for my family and my loved ones back here at home. Obviously facing those type of obstacles, those particular type of instances were very tough moments in my life, but they also made me even more resilient and focus in what my why is.
I was just going to ask you about resilience and talking about that to younger people, and perseverance as well.
Yes.
And so how do you convince them that, hey, what I'm telling you is important, listen, but at the same time be relatable, and so that they, can approach you afterwards or whatever?
I think it's just making sure that people know what so many of us, quite frankly, that are going to be on the stage talk about, which is so many of us have faced obstacles, and we will continue to keep facing obstacles. But always being grounded in what your why is always brings you back to what your purpose is. And my purpose is making sure that other people like myself, if they ever encounter those particular obstacles, they know that just like me, they can overcome them as well. As long as they really hone in and make sure that they understand what is their purpose. My purpose is making sure not only that they're able to overcome those things, but my purpose is also in making sure that I'm a great advocate and servant for my community. And so whatever I need to do in order to be able to accomplish that particular purpose, I will always persevere through it.
So midterm elections are in November, and what do you believe are the top concerns and issues in your district, in your community, that need attention and that people are going to be really voting on in November?
I think it's a multitude of things. Quite frankly, so many communities, even outside of my district, are experiencing a lot of hurt, not only all over Texas, but in each of our individual districts. But a lot of the issues are the same. People are experiencing really tough economic times right now. A lot of the conversations that we've been having with people, because we are already out and we've been out for quite some time and knocking doors, is conversations about the increase of people's homeowners insurance or insurance rates in general. It's just become so much harder for people's dollars to go farther. And as we keep seeing more inflation in the cost of food, gas, with what's going on with the current war, all of those things, people are finding it a lot harder to be able to live day to day. And the things that they have been able to enjoy in the past with their family, they're finally finding that they're not able to really necessarily afford those things anymore. And so when people are starting to live paycheck to paycheck and not being able to, and having to make cuts, especially when it comes to important things like things for their children, you're seeing a real push amongst our communities and a vocalization of frustration about what they're seeing as far as what's going on both in the state as well as the national level as well.
And what can the state do you think, to kind of ease the burden? I mean, with Iran, it seems like gas prices are going to go back down now. The cost of a barrel of oil is dropping. So people may see a break in that in the next week, 2 weeks, whatever. But like you said, there's insurance costs, property taxes are always a big concern.
Sure.
The cost of groceries, the middle aisle of the grocery store, prices keep going up. So what can the state do about that?
Well, there's a lot of things that obviously right now we're in the interim part of the legislature. So the state is currently actively looking at a lot of these things on our committees. Certainly property taxes, you talked about that, as well as we just recently had a insurance interim hearing that's also studying why the increase in costs for insurance rates for Texans, studying that as well. So a lot of these things are going to translate into ultimately legislation that we'll be looking at in the 90th, which is why it's so important that people pay attention to those interim hearings right now. And certainly we are on as far as a state rep. But it's also important that our constituents are aware of that. And so our office is making sure that they're aware of what the kind of stuff that they're studying right now and the ways that they can be involved in voicing their concerns and their hurts that they're feeling right now, because us as elected officials need to know those things in order to make right policy decisions when it comes around in the 90th. But there is also things that we're doing on the state level that are not easing these things, and that is very important that we also are making aware to our constituents those things as well. So just recently, because we are here at LULAC, just recently there was a change in the DMV rules involving, in particular, individuals that have status. The ability to drive here in the state of Texas was taken away from them, even though technically they are able to have driver's licenses because they do have status based under immigration law. That takes our drivers and that minimizes a workforce that we already lack from being able to make sure that we get our groceries to our grocery stores so that consumers can go and get those. Those type of policies are things on the state level that we should not be implementing, because in fact, instead of benefiting our constituents and easing the hurt that we were just talking about, it in fact is exacerbating that hurt.
And when you talk about that change, was that initiated by the federal government, or was this the state simply following the federal rule, or was this the state making this decision itself?
No, this is the state, and specifically the governor that essentially made that directive to our agencies. And that's not the only policy. There are other policies that we've seen also come from the governor's office dictating to our agencies and essentially circumventing what the legislature does. And so it's really important that we allow every branch of government to have the ability to do its job, because us as a legislature, as duly elected officials for all of our districts, need to have the ability to weigh in and do things, study these type of things in the interim, so that way we can do it the right way and pass it as a bill in the 90th session, and therefore eventually end up on the governor's desk so that way he can sign it into law.
Was this done as a reaction to, some accidents that we've seen where some drivers don't know how to speak English, and so people are saying, well, we've got to protect our citizens on the roads. Was that part of what's driving this?
I think a lot of this really kind of stems from an anti-immigrant rhetoric that we're seeing here in the state of Texas. Yes, that the argument is that what that is specifically stemming from, but what we have seen, the data shows that in very rare instances has that ever been the occurrence. In addition to that, there are policies that we can put in place to make sure that those particular things don't happen. And that is the kind of stuff that we should be studying and moving towards and working together and doing those things the right way versus essentially seeing what we could label as a sweeping executive order to agencies and circumventing the legislature.
Are you going to be working on legislation such as this to prevent the governor from being able to just do an executive order and instead having the legislature weigh in?
Well, there's already a mechanism for that, right? There's supposed to be separation of all of our branches from each other. It's enshrined within our Constitution. It shouldn't be on the legislature to essentially dictate our other branches to do what they're obligated to do under the Constitution. But as far as any type of potential legislation that may touch on that, I'm proud to be part of the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, which has really been in the forefront under my chairman, Ramon Romero, in making sure that we do anything and everything that we need to, and making sure that we not only protect our communities, but we protect the economy here in the state of Texas, we protect businesses, and that we do everything the right way, and respecting and recognizing that every branch has their jobs and their responsibilities.
And I wanted to ask you, because we're chatting a little bit about the midterm elections, what impact do you think Latinos will have this year as opposed to years past?
I think Texas Latinos have a substantial impact, and Latinos have had an impact for a very long time. But what we are seeing, certainly across the nation, right, in all of these special elections and primaries that we have been seeing, there is a huge swing of Latino voters that in the past have voted predominantly more towards Republicans, right, in favor of Trump during his last reelection. And so what we're seeing is now the Latino community is swinging the other way. And that's because of a lot of the policies that we're seeing, not just on the national level, but here in Texas on the local level as well. Right here in Fort Worth, we were able to elect Taylor Remitt in a very Latino district. And as someone who was block walking in the Latino community for Taylor, I can tell you that the sentiment amongst our community is that they're tired of being taken advantage of. They're tired of being abused, and they're tired of being lied to. And our community is the kind of community that they show up when they feel like they're threatened and they're attacked. And absolutely right now, that is exactly how my community feels.
And what were they, when you talk about it, they're tired of being abused, so tired of being lied to?
Yes.
How?
Well, a lot of, in particular, Latinos that I had the ability to speak with and connect with was because a lot of them voted on economic issues. And they feel like those have not translated into what essentially we are sitting in right now. And they're absolutely right. Just like we were talking about the inflation going up, homeowners insurance in general going up, gas prices going up because of the war in Iran, all of those things, they are finding it a lot harder, just like any other family and community, to make ends meet. And so what they were promised about essentially more of that economic lift up of the community, they're not seeing it. In addition to that, they're seeing people around them who look like them essentially being rounded up and thrown into detention centers. They're aware of what's going on here in the state of Texas, and I certainly think that that has impacted our community, because now it's not necessarily amongst some of the community members who felt like, oh, but I'm a US citizen, or oh, I'm a green card holder, or oh, I have legal status, I did it the right way, they're not gonna come for me. We're not seeing that as being the case. Now we're seeing that they, in fact, have picked up US citizens, that they are racially profiling people as Latinos. They have to get to that point in order to determine what your status is. And so now the community is being very much impacted by that. They don't like it, understandably. And so now they are showing up and they're voting in the manner that they're voting, which is they're moving the other direction.
So you think this will be a good year for Democrats when it comes to the Latino?
I absolutely believe that it will be a very good year for Democrats. And in particular, the redistricting that we did here in the state of Texas, a lot of those districts were based off of Latino votes. And from what we were looking at the data, and these were conversations that some of us were having during the redistricting, because in particular, some of us of the Latino community that are state reps were talking about, what we are feeling within our community is there is a change. There is a change coming. And so ultimately how the map came down, we very much, even though we were very disappointed in how everything panned out as far as the gerrymandering here in the state of Texas, we still felt like there is a potential pathway for us to be able to make headway, and that was with the Latino vote. And with what we are seeing on the national level, it absolutely is a situation where a lot of those districts may in fact not go the way that they intended, that Republicans intended them to go by gerrymandering.
Well, here in Texas, Republicans designed these new districts and these new maps to benefit Republicans, give them 5 new districts. You don't think that's going to happen?
No. And I...
What's your prediction?
Well, I mean, ultimately it comes down to turnout, right? And certainly we've seen in the past where, we felt really good about everything on the ground and the sentiment and what we're seeing on the national level, but sometimes on the national level doesn't necessarily translate to Texas. But I can tell you, at least we feel like with what the swings that we've been seeing, and it's been anywhere between 10 to 15% of the Latino votes in special elections around the country, that it's very possible that even we could see even maybe 3 to 4 of those not in fact go Republican. It's a very bold prediction, and I'm hoping that that will be the case based off the Latino vote. But the really important thing is that in particular, Democrats remember that just because of what's going on within the community right now, does not necessarily that all of a sudden Latinos are for 100% back Democrats. It's going to be very important on Democrats that we still get to the community, that we make sure that we are talking to them about the issues that they care about, and that we invest in and build the infrastructure within the Latino community that they trust and believe and support the policies that Democrats stand on.
State Representative Cassandra Garcia Hernandez, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jack.